What's going on, everybody? Toronto Hoop Talk here. Today, we're going to do a free agency preview for you guys. And I put a call in. I put a super team together. I'm here with my guy, Brub, from the Wadash Report. Brub, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great time to talk Raptors as always. So I guess the first place we'll start is the team needs. Free agency is a big time. It's the main opportunity to make big changes to your team. So with that being said, when you look at the team, what do you think needs addressing?
Shooting, and more shooting. The Raptors struggled mightily in the playoffs with their three-point shooting. And as good as our starting five were, outside of that, not a lot of help from the bench came in the playoffs. And I mean, even if we bring Thaddeus Young back, even if we bring Chris Boucher back, Thaddeus Young is getting older. Ideally, you don't want him playing more than 15, 20 minutes a game. He's getting up there in age. He's there more so to mentor some of the younger guys, just to be that locker room voice. So I think the Raptors, if possible, they should try and acquire someone like a shooting guard, small forward position. And you know what? I wouldn't be against the idea of signing a center as well.
I agree. I think we need shooting for the sake of getting three-point shots, but also shooting for the sake of spacing. We have Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam, two players that are really good at getting the basket. We need to open up the paint area for them. You mentioned a shooting guard and a small forward. What are your thoughts on a stretch five? Is that something you see as important?
Stretch five is something the Raptors desperately need. I know we had Precious Achiuwa, who's slowly getting there. He's not there just yet, but if he can continuously or consistently do that next season, that is going to be huge for the Raptors. But the thing with Precious, as much as I like him, I don't consider him a legitimate center. I know the NBA has changed with modern centers being much smaller, being more rotational players, but I still believe the Raptors need a taller center for obviously different matchup purposes. I've been screaming on top of my lungs on my channel this entire past season. If we run into Joel Embiid, and that is exactly what happened. Again, there's not very many 7-foot centers that can stop Joel Embiid. So it's not just as simple as going out and signing a 7-foot center that's going to guarantee that you're going to beat someone like the 76ers. But again, it's something the Raptors desperately need. I think that would be huge for the Raptors. And as you mentioned, Pascal and Scotty love to live in the paint. And if they could have their center pull out the opposing center and have him guard him at that three-point line, that would free up so much more room in the paint, which is why Marc Gasol worked so well with the Raptors.
All right, that makes sense. I agree with what you said. Here's how I look at like the players we have on the roster right now. I look at Van Vliet, OG, Scotty, Pascal, and Achiuwa as a starting five. Now, I brought this up on your channel. I might get some pushback on that. Gary Trent as a sixth man, but like not just an ordinary sixth man, an amazing sixth man. When you look at the roster, like what do you think is the starting five we should go with?
I think, and like ideally, you would probably want a starting five of Precious, Pascal, Scotty, OG, and Fred VanVleet. But it's so much more difficult to do that because if you move Gary Trent Jr. to the bench, we know he does for one, he doesn't play as effectively. He's not efficient as a scorer. It's like you're seeing two completely different players. And we saw the same thing with Norman Powell as well. But taking into consideration that he's also in a contract here and he's going to be very likely opting out of his contract, maybe that upsets him in some ways, and maybe he looks to go elsewhere. So that could be one of those things we take into consideration. It's not as simple as just moving a player from the starting lineup to the bench. Now, I really do like Gary Trent Jr. I've been saying this for quite some time. I really do like him. I like his style of play. I like how he is all about the team. He stands up for his players. We saw OG Anunoby and Dennis Schroeder get in a fight, and you saw Gary Trent was right there to back him up. So those are just some of the qualities that make Gary Trent such an awesome teammate and a player you absolutely love. But I think ideally I would like to package Gary Trent Jr. in a trade for something a lot better in terms of maybe getting a center, maybe acquiring someone who's a really good go-to bucket getter if the Raptors could somehow manage to throw a few pieces with Gary Trent Jr. to do that. But again, it's tough. You can't just, again, it's for political reasons, for so many different reasons as well. I don't think Nick Nurse will definitely move him to the bench for all of those reasons I have just said.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like the offseason, just basketball in general, it's not purely X's and O's. Roster management is a really big part of how you make decisions. And those are all things that have to be factored in. I think we both kind of threw out the same starting five. What that leaves us is Gary Trent and basically a bunch of front court help. You have potentially Chris Boucher and Thad Young coming back. You have Kem Birch, you have Christian Koloko. The backcourt players you have are Malachi Flynn and Delano Banton, who at this point, realistically, we can't say they're anything more than projects. You hope they can come in and contribute, but there's no guarantees with those two players. You mentioned a 2-guard/3. I think what that shows is we definitely need a guard help in the offseason. And that's made even worse if Gary Trent is starting and Achua is on the bench with even more of a front court presence. With that being said, we've talked through the needs. We talked through what we have. We talked through what we don't have. What are some of the players you've identified that could help with those needs?
Now, someone I really like, we discussed this in my video, Victor Oladipo is someone I absolutely love. Like, he fits in so well with the Raptors system, but it's just unfortunate that he's at that stage of his career where he really wants to, prove himself after those injuries he's had throughout the seasons, that he is a capable starter, and he just isn't going to realistically get that opportunity. So I'm going to go with a little bit more realistic option for the Raptors. I'm not saying it can't happen. They can't sign Victor Oladipo, but I just don't see it happening given where he is at his career, and he wants to again be able to prove himself. And I don't think that'll be the case with the Toronto Raptors. But I really do like someone like Gary Harris. He's a great 3-point shooter. He can come in for the Raptors, provide some shooting, provide some spacing, and he also is a bucket getter as well if he's put in the right system. He's still fairly young. I forget how old he is, but he's I believe 28, 29 years old. Correct me if I'm wrong.
In that
But
age range.
In that age range. So again, you sign him to a 2-3 year contract, and if it doesn't work out, look, you can always trade him in the future. He's a player. He's got that reputed name. There's certain players, no matter how bad they play, they have that name that rings a bell to a lot of teams. It's like PJ Tucker. He was kind of forgotten about in Houston after Harden left, but look what happened when he went to the Milwaukee Bucks. They won the championship. Look what happened when he went to the Miami Heat. So again, now every team, it seemed like, is pursuing PJ Tucker, but he's one of those names that no matter, he could score 10 points a game, shoot like 39% from the field. There's always going to be teams like the Lakers out there that may want him. So again, I really like Gary Harris. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Raptors. He could really fill into that shooting guard position in the backup role.
Yeah, I agree with Oladipo and Gary Harris. When I thought about backcourt help, those are two names that came up, and I think that they're really good fits into what we do as far as free agency is concerned, because there's not a lot of guys that are like clean fits completely. So those are the two prominent names that came up. I have two other names I'm going to throw at you, not completely clean fits, but I want to hear your thoughts. Malik Monk.
This is one I've been hearing a lot of. Actually, I had forgotten about this, so thank you for bringing this up. I did read a report a few days ago saying he would be okay taking less money and going back to the Lakers, which personally doesn't make a lot of sense for me because it doesn't seem like they value him that much, and it just seems like he's going to be, obviously, if anything goes wrong, it seems like they blame all of their role players, everyone. So it's not a great environment to be in, to be honest. It's not a great team to be in, but obviously, clearly, he loves the LA lifestyle, which is why he may want to stay there. Malik Monk would be excellent for the Raptors. He would be such a nice shooter off of the bench. Again, he's like those Gary Harris type of players. If the Raptors are able to plug him into that shooting guard position, I know there's been questions surrounding his defense. I haven't seen too much of him to comment on his defense, but he's a great offensive player. He could really provide some shooting. He can be one of those players that you can interchange when some of the starters go to the bench. Play him with guys like OG Anunoby, play him with guys like Scotty Barnes. So I really like, again, if the Raptors are able to get Malik Monk, that would be an amazing acquisition.
Yeah. So you think about roster building, and sometimes you lean into what you already have and you stick with your identity. But sometimes when you have an identity, you have some pieces that are a little bit redundant. Malik Monk is the complete opposite. He comes in and he complements everything we have because he's so different. He's a bucket getter. He's young. He's athletic. He plays very little defense, but sometimes you need those kind of players. So he's a complementary piece to what we have, someone that's going to bring the things that other players can't bring, but does need to be compensated for in the defensive scheme. I'm going to throw another name at you, Raptors 905 alumni, Gary Payton II.
Oh, I absolutely love this. And I was actually quite sad to see him sign. I can't remember who it was he signed with once he exited the 905. I think it was the Warriors, but I really like that player because we need some depth at the guard position, like I said. But more importantly, he may not be the scorer that Malik Monk, Gary Harris, or Victor Oladipo might be. But the thing about him is he is a gloves son, which is huge because we've seen what he can do when he defends guys. And I think he would be perfect for someone like, for example, when we have guys like Tyrese Maxey or someone like a Trae Young, who is just so quick on his feet. I think Gary Payton Jr. is the perfect player you can really just throw at any of those players. And I'm not saying he's going to stop them completely. He's definitely going to do a good job at defending them and maybe slow them down just a little bit. He's got the size, he's got the strength as well. So I think that's what makes him really attractive. Again, I don't know if he wants to come back to the Raptors given the fact that he just did not get the opportunity. So maybe he holds a grudge and does not come back to the Raptors. But if the Raptors are somehow able to sign him to a team-friendly deal, I would have him back in a heartbeat. Great defensive flair. Again, I just don't understand. I mean, I know at that time we had a lot of guards, which is why weren't able to call him up and play him for the Raptors. But I'm excited. If the Raptors do sign him, he's going to be a perfect fit with our defense, and he's going to be a nitty-gritty player that Nick Nurse would absolutely love.
Yeah, he's a really interesting player. Only 6'2" with a 6'7" wingspan, so he has some switchability. He's aggressive. He's hard nosed. He's a really interesting fit. He brings the defense that we have already, but that we look for. But he also doesn't address any of our needs in terms of scoring and shooting. So we addressed some backcourt players. Obviously, we still may need to sign some frontcourt players because Boucher and Thad Young are free agents. And while I think things look good in terms of bringing them back, there's no guarantees. So are there any frontcourt players that you have your eyes on?
Mo Bamba, absolutely. We talked about this, like I said, in my other video. So if you guys actually haven't checked it out, Alum and I have done a video for free agent targets on my channel as well. But Mo Bamba is an excellent player. I know people are loving Christian Coloco. He's still a few years away from being someone who can play consistent bench minutes in terms of like 20 minutes a game. So let him develop in the 905. Don't rush him. Sign Mo Bamba for the time being. If you can, during the regular season, maybe try and move not Chris Boucher, but Cam Birch, and then have Mo Bamba as your center. Maybe you can play him with the Precious Achiuwa as well. So Mo Bamba would be excellent. Good three-point shooter for a big man. He's big. He's large, 7'1". He's got a wingspan of 7'8". Again, he can block shots. He can be a rim protector. He's got size. So I would love him for the Raptors to pursue Mo Bamba. And he's been linked to the Raptors. I mean, the Raptors were interested in there's an article that came out today that they are interested in signing Mo Bamba. So we'll see when free agency hits, but I really love Mo Bamba.
Yeah, I love Mo Bamba as well. Such a unique player. To have a player at that size with that much mobility and shooting ability, like it's so unique. He's a 2K my player, honestly. So aside from Mo Bamba, if there's any other players that come to mind, you can throw them out. I'll throw a couple out right now. In the event that we lose Thad Young, how do you feel about Kyle Anderson?
I actually like him. I liked him when he was on the Spurs, and they like to call him slow-mo because he's so slow,
Yep.
but he really fits in with the Raptors style of play. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's listed at 6'9". He fits in perfectly what the Raptors try to do. He's not excellent at one thing, but he does a lot of little things that Nick Nurse will love. He can pass, he can rebound, he can defend well. He's not I don't know what his three-point percentages are. He's a decent three-point shooter. He's not an excellent three-point shooter by any means, but he's one of those players that's versatile. He can do a lot of things on offense. He's a good defensive player. So I think Kyle Anderson would be a very underrated pickup for the Raptors. I absolutely love Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, I look at Kyle Anderson exclusively as a Thad Young replacement if we can't secure another contract with him. I don't think it would make sense to have both of them. But yeah, he's a ball handler for his size. He's very smart. He's a savvy veteran. He shoots the three better than Thad Young, and that's all I'll say. So that is an upgrade in that regard. But yeah, no, I like Kyle Anderson. Slow-mo, great nickname. I think a slept-on player. I'll package these two players together. I look at them in the same regard. I'm going to throw out Otto Porter and Nick Batum. You have two players that have done some ring chasing. They're getting towards the end of their careers. You don't know, maybe they want a good financial compensation at this point before they exit the league. Both players that have been some solid defensive players. They have good size. Defensively, I don't know if you can rely on them to be the way they were in their prime, but they can space the floor. So throw those two names out. How do you feel? Nick Batum and Otto Porter.
Otto Porter Jr. was amazing. I liked him for several years, and I'm actually surprised looking at him right now. He's only listed at 198 pounds, despite being 6'8". So that's quite a thin frame from him. But again, like I said, he fits in with the switchability of the Raptors, having these tall guys. He could be a very interesting player in terms of having him come off the bench. I mean, he shot 37% with the Warriors, which is just unbelievable on 3.4 attempts per game. That is the main thing I look for when we look for bench pieces is can he shoot threes? And he's a really good free throw shooter as well, 80%. Good rebounder, 5.7 rebounds, and again, a steal, 1.1 steal a game. He's doing this in about 22 minutes with the Warriors. He's actually a really underrated pickup. This is not a player I had really had in mind when you talk about, players they could pick up in terms of forward. Otto Porter Jr. is a really nice player. I'd actually really be interested in the Raptors signing him. And sorry, Alan, the other player you had mentioned was
Nick Batum.
Nicholas Batum as well. He is an excellent player again. Like you said, maybe he's done chasing rings, even though he didn't get it with the Clippers. But
He might never.
He might never. He might never. He might have a better chance with the Raptors with the way the Clippers, luck is. But he's a very interesting player as well. I saw him on another Raptors YouTuber, and Nicholas Batum could be one of those players again. An older player. He's a veteran. He can come in and really provide some scoring. 3-point shooting is excellent for Nicholas Batum. I believe he's listed at 6'9", so he would be a very nice addition to the Raptors as well. Again, those two players are actually really underrated pickups that very few people have actually talked about. I would absolutely love them on the Raptors.
All right, I agree. Those are two players that I think we probably have a very low chance of getting, just because they are players that have shown that at the end of their careers we want to play for contenders. We don't mind taking pay cuts. That's not really something we can really address in terms of offering them a championship opportunity. But yeah, good players, definitely good players. They fit what we want.
Sorry to cut you off. I got one more player before we move on to our topic. This is a player I've been looking at for quite some time. And again, that's if we lose Chris Boucher, because it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have him if Chris Boucher comes back. That is Jillian Smith. Now, I want to hear your opinion before I give my take here.
I think he's a player with upside. He's a player that we definitely haven't seen the best of. And those are the kind of players the Raptors look at. Projects, players that we can put in our development system and give opportunities. Yeah, as a Boucher replacement, solid player.
I really like him. I'm actually really high on him. I saw some of his highlights with the Pacers. He didn't do too hot with the Suns for whatever reason. I don't know what was going on, even though the Suns, obviously are at the top of the West there.
It's hard for these young players to thrive on really like win now teams. It's not easy.
It is, but I just don't understand why they didn't want to extend him, and now they don't want to extend Deandre Ayton. I don't understand what the Suns are doing, but he's listed at 6'10", only 215 pounds that's the big issue with Jillian Smith. But when you take a look at what he's done with the Pacers, limited games, 22 games, 24 minutes played. He shot the 3-point ball really well, 37.3% on 3.8 attempts per game. He's also rebounded pretty decently, 7.6 rebounds, 13.4 points, a block a game. Again, he's doing this in 24 minutes. The only thing I will say is that he will not be getting the same touches on the Raptors. So that's what we have to talk about when you talk about statistics. He's going to be a bench player, but I'm really excited about him. If the Raptors do sign him as a potential Chris Boucher replacement, he dribbles. He's similar in terms of what he does offensively, like Pascal Siakam, like movement-wise, feet-wise. Again, obviously not comparing him entirely to Pascal Siakam, but I really like him. I think he would be a really exciting player for the Raptors, and I've been high on Jillian Smith for a while.
Yeah, he fits the profile well for sure. Having talked about a lot of names that are more realistic, names that we have a decent chance to get, we're going to turn our attention towards some of the higher profile names. Obviously, everyone loves a splashy move. A $5 million signing for like half the mid-level exception doesn't get the like adrenaline going necessarily, but there are going to be some players that are candidates to move. And I just want to talk about how they would fit as Raptors. Do you want them? We're not worried about what's realistic right now. We're living fantasies. So I'm going to start off Bradley Beal.
Yes, heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Do you just want a yes, or do you want me to break it down for you here?
Yes or no, and give me like 30 to 40 seconds.
Yes. Creates offense in the half court, provides some floor spacing for Pascal, he could be a first option on this team with his scoring capabilities on offense. And we know Pascal's an excellent number 2 option.
I agree, definitely. Zach Levine.
Oh, I would take him in a heartbeat, man. I'm a huge Zach Levine fan. And obviously, same thing with Bradley Beal and Zach. Defense is questionable. Zach Levine, I believe he's listed at 6'6", so he's a little bit taller. You can play him at the shooting guard position. Obviously, you'd have to facilitate some players in a sign and trade, but I would love Zach Levine. Again, similar things, not at the same level that Bradley Beal does. It can shoot threes, can attack the basket, and would really fit in with our team well offensively.
So I like Zach Levine as well. I'm a little cooler on him. Like, I'm not necessarily against it, but I look at Zach Levine, and I think the difference between him and Bradley Beal is that we've seen Bradley Beal be a positive defensive player in the league before. We haven't necessarily seen that from Zach Levine. Obviously, neither contributes to the size profile to the Raptors. So if you don't contribute there, you have to bring it in other places. But yeah, no, Zach Levine, bucket getter, athletic, shoots the ball really well. I think he'd do so well for us if we had him, but yeah, who knows? He might maybe not be able to give us defense the way Bradley Beal could if he bought into our scheme. Next name, Deandre Ayton.
no. Now I say this because I like DeAndre Ayton. I actually haven't seen enough of him to really comment on his overall game. But the reason I say no is because the amount of money he'll be making, I just don't see it. Like you're paying someone who's going to be in the 20 to 25 million range personally. For that reason, I'm out. And I don't know how he's going to fit in with the Raptors system. You're gonna have Pascal, you're gonna have Scotty, you're gonna have DeAndre Ayton all clogging the paint. So like, are you expecting Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby? I mean, assuming we keep two of the three there, like, are you expecting them to jack up 10 threes a game? It's
Yeah,
for
11
that
a
reason
game, all of them.
for that reason I'm out.
Yeah, it's a hard no for me with Aiden. I think he's a good player. He brings things like definitely, but I don't think he brings enough unique stuff for us to sacrifice everything we'd have to sacrifice, as you mentioned. From a spacing perspective, disaster. Yeah, he'd help our defense, but he doesn't help the spacing, and he's not a post threat either. Like you're not going to throw the ball to him low post and let him go get a bucket over and over again. I'm so against Aiden. Like I would be so mad if he came in. All right, next name, Miles Turner.
I love him. I love him. The only thing is he's only got next year on his free contract. Is he going to want to re-sign with the contract with the Raptors, excuse me? And you're realistically having to give up one of OG or Gary Trent Jr., which I personally don't want to do. I love Miles Turner. If you could get him for less in a heartbeat, I'd do it. But again, the only issue is like if you're not moving Gary or OG, then who moves to the bench, right? From the starting lineup? Because Miles Turner is a starting center. If the Raptors do acquire him, you're not having him come off the bench. So I love him. I love what he does. Block shots, shoot threes, can provide a little bit of offense depending on how you play him. But I really like him. For the right price, I would, not for Gary or OG.
Yeah, so I love Miles Turner, the player. I just think he's a hard player to actually acquire. He's a very good defensive player, fits what we want to do, and does have some shooting upside. But the thing is, he's on Indiana and he's not kicking up a fuss. So what reason does Indiana have to trade him unless they're getting a great offer? They can sit there, they can wait for the season. They can let some teams maybe trick themselves into thinking they're contenders and pay some crazy prices. They're in a great position. Like they have all the leverage in any trade conversation. So I think if we were to get Miles Turner, we would probably lose the trade. And we have Masai, so we know that's not possible. So it won't happen. All right, next name, Rudy Gobert.
In a heartbeat, yes, not for the money though. He makes way too much money. I think he instantly makes the Raptors one of the top two. Bold take here, maybe, but he makes the Raptors instantly the top two best defensive team in the entire league. And the Raptors jump from maybe top five to even, again, bold take here, because we know defense really helps you win games. And the Raptors really lack that defensive paint presence, the shot blocker, the rim protection. Not for the money, but if the money didn't matter, I would take Rudy Gobert. Yes, again, the only issue is same thing with, like we saw with DeAndre Ayton, floor spacing, right? So again, if you're gonna have Pascal, Scotty, Rudy Gobert, floor spacing is going to be terrible. Defensively, I love him. I think he takes the Raptors to the next level and helps them win that many more games.
Yeah, absolutely. Great drop defender. Maybe some questions regarding his switchability, some questions regarding his offensive game as a whole. Great lob. Like he can catch some lobs. If he's in the dunker spot, he's finishing every time. Rebounds really well. But yeah, he's kind of a player that brings some stuff to the table and then also has his deficiencies that are fairly pronounced. He's on a massive contract. Like I think there's still 200 million owed to him in the future. So it's a hard pass for me. That contract is going to be hell later on. So I'm okay with that. Last name, Donovan Mitchell.
Oh man, this is a tough one. You're gonna have to give up quite the package for Donovan Mitchell, and it's not going to include Fred VanVleet, which really makes you question the roster, the way the roster's makeup is going to be. Like you're going to have two players that are ball dominant, but you're expecting them to play in the backcourt. I love Donovan Mitchell. If you can somehow, again, trade him for Fred VanVleet, I know that's not going to happen. You're going to have to include one of OG and Gary Trent Jr. and obviously a lot more picks and other pieces to really facilitate that trade. But if we're taking all of that out of the picture, I would take him in a heartbeat. Yes, he'd be the perfect number one scorer for the Raptors. Can hit clutch shots. We've seen that he can do a lot of things. He's a great playoff performer as well.
Really good player, bucket getter. He would help us in those half court situations. The thing with Donovan Mitchell is that like he stepped into the league, and I remember his reputation involving him being a pretty good defender, and that's that's gone. Like his reputation now is that he's not the greatest defensive player by any means. And this isn't a win now team. This isn't a defense oriented team because they have Rudy Gobert. So that's kind of a concern as for how that fits into our team. He does have wingspan for his size, as far as I remember. So that's a positive. That being said, you know what? If they traded for Donovan Mitchell internally, it would feel a lot like the Rudy Gay trade, in my opinion. Like we get a good player as far as the league goes. Is he a player that pushes the needle for us in a serious way, given what we give up for him? Like, I don't know. I'm not personally, I'm not really a fan of a Donovan Mitchell trade, even though he's a good player. I just don't think the situation exists where we can get him and push the needle as far as being a championship team now or a championship team in the future when Scotty Barnes is more into his prime years.
You do make some good points. I'm actually going to disagree. I think he definitely moves the needle for the Raptors. He's going to be an excellent half court. He creates excellent offense in the half court. Again, it's one of those situations where it's like you have Pascal on the team. You just need a number one scorer. And if Donovan Mitchell, which I don't doubt he can be for the Raptors, would be excellent for Pascal Siakam. Now you have, like, take this into consideration. I know we're going a little bit over time here, but
No worries.
You have Donovan Mitchell as your number one option. You got Pascal Siakam, who are drawing all of this attention on the defense, or other opposing teams' defenses are attracting this much towards those two guys. Look at how much it's going to free up room for, again, assuming, we don't move Fred or OG Anunoby. How much room is it going to free up for those guys there? So, again, all questions aside about the fit, but if that was the case, like, you're freeing up so much more room for the other third and fourth guy there. So I would absolutely love it. I think he moves the needle, but of course, it's not as simple as just acquiring Donovan Mitchell. You need to acquire a center and move some other bench pieces as well.
No, I actually agree with that. Like that is a good point. If you have Donovan Mitchell and Siakam and they're doing their thing and they're drawing so much attention away for who the players you mentioned, OG and Gary Trent?
And Fred VanVleet. Realistically, again, I'm not expecting the Utah Jazz to accept a trade for Fred VanVleet and picks for Donovan Mitchell. But so I'm gonna see that's assuming obviously OG and Fred stay on this team and Gary Trent Jr.'s move. So again, we're just playing NBA 2K trade proposals here. That's
we're
never
just
gonna
playing
happen.
2K. Yeah, I think that's where the issue exists because he's a player that's on a fairly big salary. So you have to match salaries to some degree. So that is going to mean probably either OG and Gary Trent going or Van Vliet and some smaller pieces. Scotty's not tradable. We don't have a ton of contracts to add. Like it's just a wonky fit. If you're keeping Pascal, you realistically have to part with Fred plus or Gary Trent and OG. So yeah, it's tough. But honestly, like again, the issue isn't with Mitchell, it's more with acquiring Mitchell for me. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Look, we have probably one of the best deal makers in the league. If there is a way to bring him in a way that's advantageous for us, I trust Masai could do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that wraps up our free agency preview. I want to thank Brub so much for making it out. If you're here and for some reason you haven't seen his channel, please go like, follow, subscribe, share his videos all over the place. If you're here from his channel, be sure to like, share, subscribe on these videos. I'm new here. I'm looking to make some videos going forward. Big Raptors fan, longtime Raptors fan. And yeah, I hope to see you guys around. Bro, thank you so much for making it out.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you bringing me on here.
No problem. No problem. I'll catch you guys around. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and find me on all socials at Toronto Hoop Talk.